Welcome back to Beauty Uncovered, and I'm Danielle Frank, and I'm really thrilled that today we have Tanaye White as our special guest. Good morning. Welcome
Good
to
morning.
Beauty Uncovered.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to speak with you.
I have to say, I have so much to unpack here because you are so accomplished. We were talking just before we started to record, and I was saying how saw your picture someplace random, and then I winded up kind of like, I go down the rabbit hole sometimes. I just can't help myself. I look up people, and I saw all that you have accomplished in the past couple of years, and I'm really excited to have you on here and talk about it. Obviously, the big thing is, of course, that you are a model and that you got your big breakthrough Sports Illustrated. But let's
Yes.
jump back a little bit. Um, you had started with, you have your bachelor's degree from the University of Maryland in economics. You have
Yeah.
your master's degree from Georgetown University in public relations and corporate communications. So I first want to talk about what was, when you're first starting college, what was your decision? What was your decision to decide, hey, this is what I want to do? I want to get into communications, economics. What was that so appealing about that career path?
Um, I actually in college bounced around from major to major. Initially, when I went into school, I started at the Southern Connecticut State University before I transferred to the University of Maryland. And there I did track and field, and that was even a whole job in and of itself as a student athlete. But originally, I wanted to be an accountant. And then I wanted to dabble into marketing. But by the time I had transferred to the School of Business, or tried to transfer to the School of Business at the University of Maryland, they basically have this really rigorous program where they have this one class, I think it's statistics, business statistics, and they call it the weed out class. Basically, if you don't make it past this class, the likelihood of you making it into the business school is slim to none. So needless to say, I failed the class.
I was going to say, I would have
Couldn't
been weeded out quick.
quick. It was insane. It was literally one of the hardest classes of my life to this day. Even in grad school, still the hardest. So with all the credits that I had from transferring from Southern Connecticut, I was like, what am I going to do? And so in order for me not to be not only an out-of-state student, but also having all of these credits that wouldn't apply if I were to change my major drastically, I felt that the most applicable one would be economics. So I did economics. I had already dabbled in a few classes my freshman year. So I was familiar with it. But boy, let me tell you, it is so complicated and complex. And I think by the time I was a senior, I didn't really realize the path that is economics, and it wasn't anything I wanted to do. So it turns out that I was such a huge social media person at the time. Facebook, Twitter, you name it, I was on it. I decided to apply for a social media internship. And so I got one, and I was able to spend the summer in New York City doing social media work for a nonprofit that's focused on social justice issues and the whole nine yards. And it was like the best experience of my life. And from that moment, I was like, I know I want to be a social media specialist. I see that it's a career, it's actually real now. And this is what I want to do. And so that's what actually inspired me to go on and get a advanced degree, simply because I didn't have the fundamental skills that I would need in communications if I wanted to pursue that as a career.
So that was like in what, 2014,
Yep,
2016? Because
2014.
back then, social media specialists in that, I guess a lot of people would have been thinking, hey, is that really a career? But isn't
Yeah, it
that the
was.
way things always is?
Yes, even my parents were like, wait, you can have a job for that? I was like, yeah, look, you make good money too. Like, yes, this is a thing.
I have to say my dad, who, he was 86 when he passed, but he was in the Navy, and they taught him computer programming. And that's when they were big machines and big buildings. And when he got
Yes.
out of the Navy, he said, oh, I think I really want to pursue this. And his parents were like, that's not a thing. As parents are not always on top of things, but it became a thing. But
Yeah.
so you winded up going on, you got with public relations and corporate communications, but you
Yes.
winded up going into a career where you were a senior communications analyst for government agencies
Yes.
and international defense contractors.
Yes.
Any particular reason why you chose that particular field? Because
Well,
you
it
think
was,
social media, like, I mean, the breadth of it
yes.
is huge.
Yes, it's very huge. And the thing is, at that time, you would only see social media pages being formed around like fashion pages, beauty pages, and all of that. But by the time that I was looking seriously into joining the workforce for social media, it was around the time where other companies of all sizes and of all backgrounds were getting on board. And so while I was applying and throughout grad school, I was actually a manager for Abercrombie and Fitch, but we're not going to talk about that. But I was applying to all of these jobs around DC, and I got feedback from the VA, the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I was like, awesome, I hope I get this. Like, I've never done this before. I'm not too familiar with veterans outside of, my aunts and uncles who are in the field or are veterans themselves. So like, I wonder what this could entail. And, lo and behold, I got the job and I was managing their entire social media suite for their small business programs. And I enjoyed it so much. And I think that experience in itself helped me when I wanted to transition to a new company. I secured a job with BAE Systems, who is one of the largest defense contractors in the world. They make protective military equipment for militaries across the globe, not just the US. And I was not only managing their social media pages in the US, but I was also helping to support them in the UK. It was awesome. They would fly
Wow.
me around the world, fly me around the country. I was, doing Instagram stories and reels. Like, this is a legitimate job and they were paying me great money. So I loved every single bit of it.
Wow. So do you find that from your experience with, because I mean, obviously you're all across social media. That's how I found you later on. Do you find that from that experience, you're just applying a lot of what you've learned from that? I mean, I know it's totally different fields, but I mean, is it still translatable going from that career to another?
Yeah, it definitely is. I would say for me personally, I still even dabble in it today. I actually own my own social media business. So I help small
Wow.
businesses who are looking for either to revamp their social media strategy or to start it up because they didn't have one. So that's my focus. But then, even as a model, it's social media focused in the industry to like the umpteenth level. Like, literally, when you walk into a casting nowadays, they ask for your first name, your last name, and then your Instagram handle and how many followers you have. Like, it's really important to these brands. They want to know who they're working with. And also, if maybe in the future you can be a brand ambassador for them, which is something that is so huge. So I feel like social media, I know a lot of people, especially let's say boomers, are a bit hesitant about it and its power. But it's something that you can't really put off anymore. Like, if you want to have a business, you need to have social media. If you want to be, in the know of what's going on, you got to have social media, whether it be a Twitter, an Instagram, or even a Facebook. You don't have to have all three, but I mean, you have to have something.
I think a lot of people, particularly an older generation, I know from my parents and et cetera, they have a fear that too much of their information is going to be out there. I
Yes.
mean, what do you feel about all that?
I agree. And I believe that that's why we have to be very sensitive on what we share on these accounts. So when you first log in, you're seeing things like share your name, share your age, share your location, what's your birthday, so we can congratulate you when it comes up. Like, you have all of these things, but not realizing you actually don't have to provide this information
Mhm.
because that is data that they are technically selling to other companies. We don't think about that when we read the terms and conditions and click I agree and we sign up and join and build a profile, but that's actually what they're doing. So I would always say just have some discretion on the things that you actually do want to share and the things that you are comfortable with maybe being sent out into the world.
Wow. So you here you are going along doing your fabulous career, traveling all over the place. And in 2019, you heard, I believe it was 2019, you heard about an audition for the Sports Illustrated models. So
Yes.
how did you got to walk me through this? Tell me how you heard about this and what made you suddenly go, I'm going to do that. Because that's brave. That is brave.
Well, if I'm being honest, the story sounds so cliche, but it was 2018 because basically each year, the previous year leads you into the next year. So
Okay.
in 2018, they're getting ready to gear up for the 2019 issue. And so in 2018, I was doing my thing. I was a fashion blogger, I was working, at BAE, doing all this stuff. And I was really heavy on Instagram. Like I was hell bent on becoming like a really popular blogger, fashion, food. My brand at the time was the Geek in Heels because I like to code and play video games, but I also like the fashion side of life as well. So that was my brand. And one day I'm messaging an old friend of mine from college and we're just talking about our aspirations that we have for the year. This is like maybe March or April. And I was like, yeah, like, I really want to, work my way up the corporate ladder, and then I also want to make sure that I'm doing all the stuff that pertains to blogging. But if I'm not gonna lie, I've always had this deep-seated dream of wanting to become a Sports Illustrated model, and I've never said that out loud to anybody, but it's something that I will always want to do. Don't know how, but it's just something that, if it happens, I would love to do it. And mind you, I don't have much of any model experience at all. Like maybe a few shoots for friends here and there casually, but no experience, not to what other girls have. And they responded back with their aspirations. My friend Kawan, he actually had two brain surgeries. And he is now author of a book talking about his journey with, I believe it was brain cancer. And it was just this beautiful moment that me and him had. Maybe a few weeks later, I just happened to see on my feed a flyer for Sports Illustrated's second ever open casting call. And it was like, anyone can apply, it doesn't matter if you're a model or not, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, this is crazy because I was literally just talking about how I want to do this. And so, and mind you, I have receipts for this conversation. So if you need screenshots, I got you. So, I decided, let me try. Like, what's the harm? It's in Miami. That sounds fun. I've never been to Miami. Like, let's make this a whole thing. And so I got myself a ticket to Miami. I applied online. You can either apply online or you can apply in person. I decided to apply online, submitted an Instagram video, and I heard back. And I was like, awesome, I made it. Like,
Wow.
wait, this is insane. Okay, awesome, let's do this. So I went down. And when I walked to the W Hotel where they always host it, the building was surrounded with women down the street. And they reported that casting session, that there was over 10,000 women who applied. 10,000. And to think that I made it to the top 60. So when I get there, I make it to the top 60. We spend all day in this conference room. I'm able to interview with Kate Upton. I hugged her. I was freaking out. I was like, even if I don't make it any further than this, this is the dream that I wanted. Like, I'm good. And then I honestly didn't think I was going to make it to, the next round, but I did. I made it to the top 16 and I was able to walk in their runway show. We were literally walking down a runway in the middle of a pool, lights, cameras, like just literally stuff that you only dream about or see in movies. That was the life I was living. And a few months later, they made the decision of who would be the top 6. And the top 6 are girls who are actually in the magazine. And I didn't make it. And I was very hurt by it. But there was a little piece inside of me that was like, just give it one more try. You made it that far and you had barely any experience. Let's try again and see what happens next. And I reapplied for the 2020 issue and I made it.
It's so funny when you were telling me about how you told your friend your deepest, darkest secret of what it is that you really want to do. I cannot tell you how many people that I've spoken to that have like this secret aspiration, but they're afraid to say it. Yes. And then when they say it, suddenly the opportunity appears. It makes me wonder if it's almost because the cosmic thing, whatever. But I sometimes feel like when you actually speak it, it's almost like, and then you see it. Speaking it makes it real. And then, you might have been seeing it all this time, but because you had to speak it, that is so cool. Because I know that happened with me. It completely changed my career when I actually verbalized what I wanted. And then I was like, oh, hey, all of a sudden the opportunities.
Yes, I'm a huge believer in speaking it into existence. I think that moment really solidified what that message means. And from then on, I've always, anything that I want to achieve moving forward, I speak it out, I speak it to other people. It may be unrealistic, but hey, I mean, if I could have done that, then who's to say I can't do something else that's huge and amazing?
I think that's also part of it is the confidence of saying, it's kind of like saying, oh, unrealistic. I mean, everything is unrealistic. Anything can be unrealistic for anybody.
Right,
So why
right.
not speak it and own it? And I think that's something that I wish, especially with young women. And again, going back to your social media, I love how you empower young women to really kind of live the best life, spiritually centered, and really empower themselves. Um, so let's dive into this now. So you win for your audition, you did
Yep.
the whole thing, and then you're like, okay, gonna try again next year. So do you have to go through the whole process all over again, or
Yes,
do
you
you
do.
do you get to cut the line a little bit?
No cutting, no cutting, unfortunately. Yeah, I reapplied again. And I was very hesitant to reapply simply because the process is very stressful and strenuous. It's about a 6 month long process. And oftentimes you don't really know what's next. You don't really hear from the editors until they're like sort of ready for you. Like, hey, we have this article. Do you want to be interviewed for it? Or hey, would you mind sharing your story that we can share on our social media pages? And other than that, you're just sort of like, okay, but like, what's the structure? Like, what is actually like the next steps for all of us? And so it can be very, I guess, stressful on the mind. But I literally waited until the last day you could apply to reapply. Literally the
Wow.
last day. And even when I made my submission video, it started raining, but I was like, I have no other option. I have to do it today. So my second submission video, I'm literally dancing in the rain. I was like, I'm gonna make this work. But after that, yeah, I was able to make it to the top 17 that year. It was such a beautiful journey because they had such incredible women, such a diverse cast. One of the women had have alopecia. Another girl was in a wheelchair. And then my fellow co-winner with me is Kathy Jacobs, who is 56 and one of I think, if not the oldest model they've had in the magazine, one of the oldest. So it's like we
Wow.
just truly that year were representing diversity in all of its forms.
Wow. And I mean, what a lesson, when you're trying something and you get to a certain level and then, unfortunately, it's almost like ripped away from your grasp.
Yes.
It is so easy to go, well, I have this other thing, there's no real point. I tried it. It was a great experience, blah. But to kind of suddenly go, okay, you know what? Let's try it again. I know it's exhausting, and the rewards. Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So
Yes.
one of the real call outs that I had read about this is that when Sports Illustrated said, okay, we're going to have you in the magazine, one of the things that they contacted you about was how you wanted to wear your hair. And you had said you wanted to wear it natural. Now,
Yep.
I read somewhere that they said that they wanted to make sure that you had everything that you needed to take care of your hair. So what was that conversation like? And I am fascinated because knowing from photo shoots and I've working with models, I've seen what can happen to natural hair and how it can break and, people not necessarily knowing how to handle black hair.
Yeah. It's such a concept in itself to be walking on set and not sure if the hairstylist is going to heat damage your hair that day, which happened to me 2 years ago. And my hair is finally just getting back to life. But yeah, the SI team reached out to me, but not too long before we shot in Turks and Caicos, and they're like, "Hey, we just want to double check how is your hair going to be?" Because they literally have seen me with a wig on, with my afro. They see, all the different hairstyles that I
I'm
always go.
surprised they didn't tell you this is what we want.
No, I was as well. So when I responded that, I was like, hey, I was actually planning on wearing my natural hair. Is that okay? And the reason I even said, is that okay, is because I'm literally one of maybe 3 women, if that, who even have been in the issue with natural curly afro hair. So I knew it wasn't necessarily something that they have had before in the magazine. And I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't, going against something that maybe they had already planned for me to look like. But their response was like, hey, yeah, girl, yeah, of course. Like, we just wanted to make sure, that you had, what you needed. And, obviously want to know what you're coming onto set looking like. But yeah, and so I felt so much relief in that moment simply because you don't have that opportunity as a model these days. When a client books you for a job, they usually ask like, hey, can she come with her afro, or hey, can she come with straight hair today? It's never really like, what are you feeling, how would you like to come today, you know? So I really felt liberated in that aspect, that they wanted me to do whatever I felt was best for me.
I love that. And here's my question is that when you look at the press from the past year, and they talked about the first time that you were in the Sports Illustrated, there was a big attention on your hair, which, I mean, to be completely candid, was magnificent and absolutely gorgeous. Do you feel the weight of having to represent in that way? Because I mean, I was reading a little bit of your story. I know that you were saying that or granted, I'm not sure when the story was printed, but it was saying that you had only made the decision to go to natural hair at that time 3 years prior, and you had cut off
Yep.
all your hair. And
Yeah.
then you weren't even sure what the texture was going to be like because you had it relaxed from the time that you were a little girl.
Yes.
So this is relatively new to you.
100%. Even to this day, I still feel like it's new to me. And sometimes I have a bit of imposter syndrome because I'm like, I still am even trying to figure out the texture of my hair. Like it switches and it's finicky, and like I don't really know what to do myself. But yeah, I love the fact that they embraced me for my natural hair, and I love the fact that I could represent for natural hair models. I feel really empowered that I can represent for people for women and even men, who have natural hair, not only in the SI, world, but also outside of it in the modeling industry, simply because we don't see enough of it. And if you were to look back 15 years ago, you didn't see afros like at all, maybe once in a while. Like I think, like name an afro icon outside of Angela Davis. Like it's
Right.
very hard to find. And so even from the aspect of just being a dark skin model as well, like the industry has transformed so much over the last couple of decades, truly representing diversity and inclusion for models in their campaigns and for brands. I remember growing up, Tyra Banks and Naomi Campbell were the only Black models who I could really aspire to or look to. And neither of them look like me. Like Tyra Banks is light skinned and she has green eyes, and Naomi Campbell has, straight hair and, more like Eurocentric features. So it's like, where do I fit in that aspect? And do I need to conform? That's something that I've always thought of as a kid, hence why I got relaxers starting when I was 6 years old. So it's
Wow.
sort of crazy. But now, as an adult and as a person who are in those shoes, I feel such a responsibility to push the narrative that you're beautiful just the way you are. You are going to be seen, you are going to be heard, and you are valued because you have people like me now who can represent that for you. And because you see it, you can aspire to achieve it yourself.
It is really funny how, I mean, in society, we want to fit in, right? Everybody wants to fit in some way, shape, or form. And sometimes I don't think we always recognize by being authentically ourselves, we're allowing others to fit in.
Yes.
You're being yourself is allowing other people to kind of have that freedom to be themselves as well. So I am so glad that you are a voice for that. That is so great. So
Thank
getting
you.
back into a hairstylist and makeup artist that you have to work with, and yeah, in the modeling industry, sometimes there's just people that do not have the experience or just not trained well. I know as a hairdresser, and I actually didn't start beauty school until I was in my late 30s.
Oh,
So I
wow.
know it's very interesting. I think I might have a different perspective of going through beauty school as opposed to someone that was 18 or 19 years old. And really, they just touch on things. You don't actually get a real true meaty breadth of knowledge until you're out in the world and learning. So when it came to um, hair that is natural, it wasn't a part of my experience. I wanted to learn, but I would never do a client unless I knew for certain I was really well trained. So
Yeah.
are you finding that when they're on set, they're just not having people come on there that have that training or is diversified, or is it that people are just bluffing it?
I think it's a lot of bluffing, and it's sad to say. I've seen it I can tell you that there's almost not a photo shoot that I've been on where there's been a hot hairstylist who's known how to do my hair. And most times when they give you the call sheet the day before, I'll look and see the hairstylist's work. And if they don't have any, diversity in their portfolio as far as hair goes, I'll make the decision, okay, I'm gonna come to set with my hair already done, or okay, I'm gonna, hope that they know how to do my hair type of situation. Which is really sad and disheartening, especially when you see other models with straight hair coming to set with it wet. They just got off the shower and they don't have to spend the extra 3 hours at 3 a.m. waking up so they can go to their 6 a.m. call shoot. So
Right.
it's very disheartening. It's very frustrating, especially since, as I mentioned before, someone actually heat damaged my hair to where my hair was pinned straight. And that was 2 years ago. So it's been this whole journey of me even getting my hair back into its fluffy state. Like, it was so sad and droopy, and my hair was just
Oh,
not as so that after that experience, I become much more vocal about the need for hair knowledge in the industry, simply because when you heat damage someone's hair, or destroy it in some matter, you are technically ruining that model's brand, and you're ruining her chance of booking a new client. You can't go to a client with dilapidated hair.
no, no.
And so I really would like for the industry to keep moving forward in that capacity. And I also think it's not only on the model to speak up for herself. It really shouldn't be her job to do that. It should also be the hairstylist who speaks up and says, hey, I saw this call sheet. I'm not too experienced with this hair type. Maybe I should step back, and I know my colleague can actually do it. Or
Right. I mean,
even the
there's an understanding that some people have specializations, and I respect that. I'm always like, when I first started in the industry, I was a hair cutter. I could cut.
Mhm.
I was a great cutter, and that was my training. I got education in it and everything like that. So I did not want to do color until I was in a little bit later in my career, and I winded up
Yeah.
really being trained in that. But it does go back to, perhaps in the industry, they need to start looking for people that has that, wide breadth of education. We actually had someone
Yes.
on in May. Her name is Nikki Wright Rudolph, and she educates for healthy silk presses and natural hair. And I was completely enthralled. I mean, what a great opportunity for people to learn, not just to treat natural hair, but also if they do want to have the diversity of being able to have it straight, to safely and healthfully do it, where
Yes.
you're not destroying their hair or their curl pattern, because it's magnificent.
Yes. And I think that there are, I guess, hair specialists out there who, are knowledgeable of kinky hair. But I also think, and hate to say it, but I do think race does play a role, because typically speaking, hairstylists who usually do understand natural hair are Black, right? But
Right.
typically, when you are in a space of, a brand, typically, okay, let's just an example. Let's say a brand usually hires this hair agency to give stylists. And if that hair agency usually only hires a certain type of people, then the likelihood of them having that experience is going to be slimmer than if you were to branch out and hire someone who wasn't in that agency. So I think it also has to play with, I guess, the politics of the industry, the relationships that are already established, and then also, I guess, raising the voices and the experiences of people of color as well, who may be wanting those jobs but just haven't found the avenue or the method to get into that space where they can secure those jobs.
Absolutely. Do you find that it's the same with makeup artists as well?
Yes.
Really?
There's been many a time, not as often as hair, but there's been many a time that I've walked off set looking gray because the hairstylist did not, the makeup artist didn't have my foundation shade. And so now, and I'm sure you've heard it before, a lot of models, especially models of darker complexions or of kinky hair, will come to set with their own little kit of like, okay, my foundation and concealer, just in case they don't have it, my afro pick and my hair creams, just in case they don't have it. Like, you sort of come
Right.
prepared just in case. Like, you just want to be prepared for what could happen.
Wow. Wow. I for some reason I would have thought with makeup artistry that there'd be a little bit more diversity in the palettes and whatnot to cover everything. I kind of understand the hair. Granted, that's the industry I'm in. And again, like as someone that is a professional and doesn't have a vast experience, blowing out hair and whatnot, I did. But
Mhm.
my fear as a professional, I would never want to damage someone's hair, never.
Right.
So I would yield to the better the people that have more experience than I do, and hopefully learn as much as I can. But no, really fascinating, really fascinating. So I mean, we have exciting news now because so last year you had your first foray into the Sports Illustrated, but you're also going in this summer as well. So tell me what
Yes.
happened. So you went at it again. Did you have to start all over
Hmm.
again?
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my
So
gosh.
when I applied twice, the second time around was actually even harder than the first time because COVID hit. And so no one knew what to expect. No one knew what was going to happen. And we didn't even really know if the magazine was going to come out, 2020.
Wow.
But it did. And although we didn't have our launch week or the red carpet, so, the whole, the cherry on top of the
This is
entire
so
experience.
disappointing.
Yes, it was so sad. But even though we didn't have that, we have 2021. We're making up for it. Sports Illustrated is launching their launch week this July, and the magazine is going to be coming out July 20th, which I'm ecstatic about. And this is technically my rookie year. So even though I've been around with the company for a couple of years now, I'm a rookie.
I saw that, and you had written that you're a rookie, and I was sitting there going, "But this is her second time. By now, I would think you'd be mentoring the newbies."
Well, I actually did. So for the 2021 issue, this actually happened this past May. They were shooting for their swim search hopefuls in New Jersey and Atlantic City, and I actually got to serve on set as a mentor for the girls. So it
Oh,
was,
how
and
cool!
I think the word mentor is used very loosely because the girls knew what they were doing. They didn't need anything. We were basically just cheerleaders. I was with Camille Kostek, who won the swim search the first year they ever had an open call, and she was actually their cover girl for 2019. And then Brooke Snader, who also was a swim search winner. So you had all these swim search winners on set with you, going, "Yes, girl, yes, you look amazing." It was so
Oh, that
fun.
is so cool. So with all of this coming out, and I mean, do you get to do it? I mean, things are opening up a little bit and everything. Are you going to get
Yes,
to do a lot of the press releases and the red carpet and all that fun stuff this year,
that
or is it
is
low
the
key?
goal. No, I think that they're really going to come out with a bang this year. Their launch week is going to be pretty much a full week. And this also goes in hand with Miami Swim Week, which is the week before. So I know a lot of the swim search girls have already shared that they're going to be walking in the show. SI hasn't released all the details, so I can't share everything yet, but I know that July
Understood.
is going to be a month to remember.
Oh, how exciting. How exciting. So, I mean, with these both these opportunities where you were in the Sports Illustrated, which again, kudos for you for just diving in and just completely, because even during that time, you started your own agency during COVID
Yes,
as well. I
yes, I
mean,
did.
when I was saying in the beginning, there was a lot to unpack. You were very accomplished. I'm like, you've done far more in your 29 years on this planet than I have in my 49. So am duly impressed.
Thank
What do
you.
you think is going to come from here? I mean, what are your hopes and aspirations from here? What kind of jobs and what kind of exposure?
That is such a great question. And honestly, my aspirations change every single day.
Mm.
I would love to be in a few fashion shows. I'm obsessed with Rihanna and all things Fenty Beauty and her Savage by Fenty line. So if I can get in there some way, I would love to do that. And then also, I would love to start helping people who have mental health issues. Mental health is something that is very close to my heart. And every Friday on my Instagram, you'll actually see me acting like a goofball. I call it Feel Good Friday, where you just dance, shake off, the bitters of the week. If you had a bad week, shake off, the sadness if you're going through something, and just live and feel free to be free. And so I feel like dancing is the best way I can do that. So every Friday, I say, hey guys, it's Feel Good Friday, let's dance. And, I just make a fool of myself. But those are some of the things that I see, I guess, at least in the near future, of things that I will be working on.
I feel like the mental health, I also caught that as well. And I think that is such a great, it's an important platform, especially, and in the past year, I feel it is very interesting. I read a report not long ago that therapists are so high in demand, you can't even get them anymore.
It's tricky. Yeah. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
go and go through, let's say, I can't remember the website I use, but there is this search engine for therapists. And a lot of them will say hey, I'm booked out, or I'm not taking on new clients at this moment. And, it's actually not too unexpected right now, given COVID, and we all have been going through everything under
Yeah.
the sun. So it makes sense. But yes, if I started therapy myself, and I definitely want to champion, if there's someone out there who is suffering, hurting, it's okay to speak out and speak to someone about what you're going through. You're not crazy. You're not going through it alone, but just make sure you get the help, because you matter and you're meant to be here.
So we were talking a little bit, actually right before we came on, about how, I have my 3 sons and they're all at that impressionable age where they're trying to decide what career path. Everything is so heavy and important. When you're first out of high school, you're going into college, you're in college, you're trying to make decisions on what you want to do with your life. There's certain expectations, because you're
Yes.
investing all this time and energy. And, I've always said to them, just because you've went for something, that you can always pivot. You can always
Yes.
pivot to something else, and still use the skills in which you have learned in whatever path that you were originally looking at. So what advice would you give someone that is, in their early 20s and right now kind of looking at their path and going, I'm not sure if I'm on the right place? What would be your
Yeah.
advice?
Oh, I could go
I
on.
know the first one is going to say, speak it, speak it.
Yes, speak it into existence. I would also say, think about any and every dream you've ever wanted. Write it down. I think that when you write it, sort of like speaking it, you're able to connect with it more, and it seems more tangible. And then from there, what are the things, and are there ways that you can do, I guess, what are the steps you could take to make that dream happen? For me, modeling is okay, work with a photographer, have a photo shoot, try and see how I feel, stuff like that. And then I think also, if the dream scares you, do it. Pursue that one the hardest. Because for me, modeling was a huge fear of mine. I was terrified to apply for SI. And I was also terrified to walk down the runway. I was also terrified to reapply. I'm still terrified. Every waking moment, I'm terrified of what's next. But that is the best feeling, because once you achieve it, you feel so accomplished, so rewarded. Everything starts to feel like it's falling into place. So I would say those are definitely my recommendations.
And when we talk about terrified, it's often because there's fear, right? I mean, there's a
Yes.
fear, there's a fear of failure, a fear of looking a certain way, and oh, what if they, whatever, what do they think of
Yeah.
me? So no, I would not consider the first time that you went through the rounds with Sports Illustrated as a failure, because you got so incredibly far and beyond 10,000 people.
Right.
But with that being said, I can understand where it felt like a failure at that time when you didn't make it to the final cover or magazine.
Yeah.
So what final lesson would you give people when it comes to failure? Because I always see it as a lifeline. Like, failures, in my opinion, are just life's way of giving you a lesson, that there's something to be learned from that. And that's
Yes.
where, so you can move forward, that you
Yes.
need failure. You need it, because otherwise you're not growing.
Yes. And I'm a type A person. I hate to fail. I hate to, think that I didn't do something perfect the first time around. But sort of just what you said, every failure is either a lesson or a redirection. It's never truly a failure per se. So I would say, if you do feel like you are quote unquote failing, or just failed at something, don't let it get you down. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person or that you have less value. I guess, sort of think about the experience, what you learned from it, and take those little nuggets that you have to go full force with the next try or the next idea or aspiration that you want to achieve.
Today, I'm so grateful that you came on today. I think that you have such a great story and a great message that I think so many people can learn from, and then maybe aspire to. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was awesome.